You just press play on the Last Breath Hunt Cast, home of the Huntroversy. We're here to entertain, educate, and engage. And in case you didn't know, you only live once. But if you do it right, once is enough. Don't waste it.
Hello, all you beautiful men and women. This is the Last Breath Hunt Cast. Tuning in to episode 164. I'm Garrett Bolkus. Across from me is Grant Putnam.
Hello.
And today is October 17th. A lot of us folks are going to consider this to be the October lull. And so today we're going to talk about tactics that you can use during this week to bridge the gap between some of the best hunting in the Midwest. So before we do that and we talk about some of the things that we do during this week, we got to pay the bills. And first and foremost, the company that makes this podcast possible is Badlands Gear. We love running their stuff. We've had a ton of success, unconditional warranty. It's a really a wholehearted recommendation. Yes, are they sponsors of the show? For sure. But, if they said we couldn't make it work next year, I'd still run their gear. I'd still believe in that Red Bull skull. And with the code LASTBREATH22BL30, you get 30% off at the checkout.
Yeah. What a deal.
Also,
Splendiferous.
This podcast is brought to you by Tompkins Taxidermy. Michael and Wayne over there do a knockout job. You guys are already bringing some deer their way. And I really think that this November is going to be one for the books. Here specifically, local to the Quad Cities, we've had plenty of timely rain. We don't have to worry about EHD. The crops are out or getting out early. We've had just a really good summer for antler growth, so I think there's going to be some absolute giants brought into Tompkins this year. But if you want to trust them with your trophy, with your memory, and to preserve that for a lifetime, we can't say enough good things about those guys. Michael and Wayne do a great job, communicate fantastic, great turnaround time, and just the overall value that you get out of a mount there is really hard to beat.
A couple of things before we get into here, just like things that I've been thinking about in terms of mid-season tactics. I think that this week, this is launching on the 17th, is probably the most important week all deer season long in terms of the opportunity to kill a deer in late October or early November. I think this specific week is the most critical week for in-season data that's out there. And so I find it funny, like the phrase October lull, whoever even coined that, I wonder. And I was thinking about it, I'm like, why do we even call it the lull? We've killed deer pretty much any time between the 6th of October all the way to the 31st, and about 5 different data points in between, 5 different days. And I was just thinking about all right, we go out on the 1st, opening weekend. Actually falls on the 1st of October this year for the first time in 6 or 7 years. Mm-hmm. I feel like the deer hunting is pretty much constant throughout there, and I feel like the opportunity to collect data that you need to put a buck on the ground this week is really heightened. So this is actually probably you and I's favorite week of the season in terms of using data to kill deer, I would say.
I think that's
and I feel like if you do some of these tips that we're going to give in this episode, that you could also put a deer down this week. So there's 3 or 4 things that we're going to talk about here. Number 1, you guys are probably the most prepared as you've ever been, just because if you're like us, you're probably hunting just on the weekends and probably not super hard anyway, unless there's a really nice cold snap in October. So you're probably getting out there still. The sun and daylight savings time hasn't kicked in yet, so you're still in top bow shape. And this week is really one of those times where bucks are going to start, if they have not already, really, really, really carving out their scrape lines in anticipation of not being able to share their does and not wanting to share their does come a couple weeks from now in the first week of November. So using that to your advantage, I feel like this week coming up is one of the best times to start really pinpointing, really looking at time stamps on your cameras, really looking and paying attention to the way that the bucks are entering your cameras, getting a really good idea of where a deer is bedded, if he's close or if he's far, and getting a good idea of how aggressive a buck is based upon how they're treating a mock scrape. So this week specifically, that's what you and I are looking at, is scrape data, aggression of bucks on trail camera video, and trying to put a game plan together for this next 10-day stretch between the 17th and like the 27th, 28th, 29th, 30th-ish to put a buck on the ground. But more so by design than, just being in the right spot in the right time during the rut.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I think the reason why the October lull comes into effect is that there is a time frame where deer movement kind of slows, especially if you have that little warm up in the middle of October.
Don't you feel like it's like the whole month of October, like leading up to like the 20th though? That's what I was thinking about. Like, is the phrase October lull, like I realize if our opener was on September 1st that there's opportunity still to kill a deer on a heavy feeding pattern, like right at the end of velvet or slightly post velvet. But I feel like the whole beginning of October, it just kind of depends. Like if you've got a deer that's bedded close and you're lucky enough to have a big buck bed on your property or close to it, I feel like you could still kill them all October.
Well, here's the thing. I think that, like you said, October or September, you can definitely kill a deer on that summer pattern still, that late summer pattern. But the first weekend in October, which it's rare this year, it happened on a weekend. The deer haven't been hunted, so they're not pressured. You can get away with a lot more, right? They're still comfortable coming out into their spots or their whatnots. And like Homie killed a deer on opening day last year, right? A fantastic buck on public ground to boot. But as hunters continue to pressure and push in, and everybody has neighbors, whether you're out there hunting or not, like your deer begin to get educated. And then all of a sudden, I think what happens is that mid-October little warm-up, you get a couple stretch of days where it's hot, and that really shuts things down. You have that creation of a lull by hunting pressure, a little bit of a warm-up. The deer have shed their velvet, and they're being more nocturnal now anyway. That's where that term comes from. But, man, that's why I wanted to talk about this week, is that this week is the week that you set yourself up for success. Not that you haven't been doing prep work beforehand. You've been running your cameras and hanging your stands, doing all this other stuff. But like this week specifically is where you take all that, you put it down into a condensed format, and you're like, all right, man, I'm just waiting for that late October cold front that comes every year. It could be the 22nd. It could be the 28th, anytime in between. And it's like, I'm ready because this buck has been doing this same thing, and like, now I know what to do. I think that most importantly, the biggest thing that I think we do this week is that we're reactive to the data. We are blessed that we have cellular cameras and we can afford to run more than some. And we don't have 50 cellular cameras or anything crazy like that, but we have a good amount. And it's like, we've talked about this earlier in this little series, that we move our stands in conjunction, and we respond and we react to sign as it pops up. Like, this is the week where you hang that stand over that scrape or that mock scrape or the scrape line to hunt that deer, because that 15-degree temperature drop's coming, and you want to be there after work because you can hustle and get in after work and get in there on time because you haven't had the time change yet. And just like you said, you're in the best hunting shape of the year. You've been shooting your bow all summer, and after work, you're getting ready, your clothes are dialed in, you've got all your stuff figured out. Yep. And now's where it all comes together. And this week isn't the week for hunting, but for preparing for that moment. So what are we doing with our cameras? This week, if we don't have cell cameras, we're damn sure running them, aren't we? Yeah, we're running as many cell cams as we can on scrape lines, particularly this week on community scrapes, and we're trying to pinpoint the buck that is highest on our hit list that's the most killable. That's the best way I can describe to say that. So every year, you and I will have somewhere between one on the, whoa, this is a really bad year end, and 8 bucks that we would be interested in tagging and taking out of the field. And we are rolling through the Rolodex, seeing who is showing up the most frequently and trying to position ourselves for that first cold snap. Like we've said before in podcasts, 3
days to 7 days before you can anticipate a cold front happening in October, that is when on the front edge you need to go and tippy toe in, hang your stand up if you don't already have a permanent stand location set up, or hang your buddy stand. Like in the case of us, we get out after work, hang up a stand really quick and quietly to get prepared for that first cold snap. And simultaneously as that's occurring, we're watching our deer timestamp the way they're facing on the camera, the temperature, the wind direction that they're approaching that camera from, to try to get a very good idea of if and when they're going to enter that scrape line. Are they going to enter on this end or this end of it? We're trying to be at the best point we can to intercept them as they're going down and moving across that scrape line. So that's what we're looking at this week, in addition to our cameras being on like 30-second video mode, maybe getting one more check in to really check on like posture. And I've hammered this home, and so have you. I really feel like if you have a deer that is on camera making a scrape, there is a big difference between him tickling his tines in the licking branch,
sniffing the dirt,
and being just kind of tentative and lackadaisical about it, versus a deer aggressively, up as high as he can. His shoulders are rolled forward and he is thrashing a branch like he wants to snap it off of the tree. Those are your aggressive bucks. Those are your bucks that you're going to be able to rattle in late October and early November. Those are your bucks that are going to be so upset with you. And if you can identify those bucks, and we have for quite a few years now, if you can identify who those deer are out of your hit list, let's say 3 of those deer out of your 8 deer on your I would shoot this list are doing that, identify which is the most killable, and you could probably stand a pretty good chance of getting an opportunity or at least laying eyes on this deer in the field this week. And if you can pencil all that stuff together and roll it all together, it's a pretty good recipe for success, and you're giving yourself a better than average chance at putting an arrow through him before November even begins.
And so speaking of that, I think talking about cameras in general, we still run a lot of traditional cameras.
Mm-hmm.
Now is the time where you've probably had these cameras out since, September or even earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And the weather's been pretty all right. We haven't gotten very many super cold days, but they're coming. Now is the time where you don't set yourself up for disappointment, because like most of the whitetail hunters in the Midwest, when do they take their time off? The bow hunters in November.
Mm-hmm.
So these next couple weeks, these next 2.5 weeks reaching up to November are going to be important for you to collect your data on your trail camera still. Not saying that the data you have now is not going to give you an opportunity in the next 5 to 7 days, but if your battery life is at 40%,
change them now.
Change them now, because those batteries haven't been hit with cold yet. You're going to leave these things to soak before you take your rutcation, if you will. You want to make sure that you don't come back and find out that your camera died on November 1st when the first cold snap hit. So, that's one little thing to keep in mind this week that we're doing, because we're darn sure running cameras. And when you check them, make sure you have extra batteries, because you don't want to be disappointed on that card pull in November, because then that'll just piss you off. So that's something else to think about. I think, as you said and you mentioned too, now is another great week that if you're not hunting, that you're anticipating that cold snap, to revisit those mock scrapes or those natural scrapes and activate them. Apply some more scent. Fire that deer up. Now's the week to do it. It's not the day before you want to hunt him. It's 5, 6, 7 days out. You want to start conditioning that deer to thinking, who the heck's in my turf? Every day his testosterone's building and building and building. He's getting less tolerant of other deer in his area. And so this week is the week to do that, to check your cameras, to freshen those scrapes, to move a stand if you need to get ready for the freaking Super Bowl.
Yep, exactly. And this is also a week, if you're like us and you don't have your own agriculture equipment, make your call today. On your way home, if you're listening to this, line that up so that way in the tail end of your big rutcation, you're ready to mow corn. You're ready to, take the fence down that are fencing up your beans. You're ready to make these big food plot shifts so that way deer can get into them and use them and start being conditioned to them in terms of when your first gun season's rolling around. Like, this is the week that you and I are lining all that stuff up, so that way we can mow our corn or knock it down on the 10th so that it's good to go
for
firearm season. So start making those calls and making sure you're a couple weeks out of doing those things. This would also be a really good weekend if the weather's going to be crappy to go and shoot your firearm for one or two last times. So we're not those people that go and shoot our gun every weekend, but we try to make sure 2 or 3 times throughout the summer and the early fall when the weather is crappy that we're devoting an evening or a mid-afternoon if we are going hunting to getting out the gun and taking a couple pulls, a couple different rounds of that off of the bench, not in the vise. Using whatever we're going to take into the field to give one last brush up, because you are not going to want to leave the woods in November to go and take care of those things. You're going to want to be glued to the tree pretty much all day long. As we know, sometimes dirtbag dedication and time are what kill deer. And you're not going to want to be doing these little chores and little auxiliary things when, like you said, the Super Bowl happens. So this is a great time to go slow so you can go fast later. Get all your preparation and things that are small. Get your patterns established on these deer. Get all these little chores done so that way from the 1st of November all the way through your gun season, whatever state you're living in, that you can go and have those things be done and those check marks be checked.
And I think to talk about, I know it's crazy, right? We're over a month away from gun season, but if you're a bow hunter, gun hunter, or just a gun hunter, right? Which a lot of people are. Like I said earlier, a lot of the crops are out, or a lot of the fields are at least opened up now. Now's your time to, maybe you haven't checked on your ground blind in a little while. You know, you got a permanent blind. Get out there if you're not going to hunt this weekend or after work, as you said, crappy, i.e. warm or super windy, gives you an opportunity to do a little, not a ton of damage, right? It's not November yet, because you darn sure don't want to be doing this stuff during your rutcation. Check on your blinds, check on your seats. Maybe you need to pull one of your wagon blinds into a field. This week is that opportunity to set yourself up for success and for continued success throughout the rest of the season, not just the end of October, not just the first part of November, but even into gun season. And as you said, too, into late season, making sure that the farmer is going to leave that, you know, that half acre or 1 acre or whatever you talked about to him in summer about, you know, hey, just
here's a reminder.
Here's still good on this. Yep. Still good on that, you know, and like, hey, Mr. Landowner, you're still okay if I pull that wagon blind into the field for this gun season. Yep. These little things are just going to be the small details that help you down the road through season to be able to be set up and ready and not behind the 8 ball.
Yep. So if you haven't already, another little chore that I like to do on hot days in mid-October is I have one arrow that's devoted out of my quiver pretty much every year, and it's my, dummy arrow that I've shot the same broadhead out of a lot of times, but it's the arrow that I punch into the target 2 or 3 times at 20, 30, 40, 50 yards to make sure that I'm ready to take a 50-yard shot or less if I need to, and my arrow's going to be flying straight. So lots of you guys have already taken that practice and that time. I just like to do that religiously when I'm practicing at this time of the year. In terms of your gun, we cannot tell you enough, especially with the ammo shortage that's going on. Please do not be the person that goes 3 or 4 days before your firearm opener in the expectation of getting a plethora of ammo to shoot. You might be screwed. You want to get that done a month before, because that way, if you go to your local sporting goods store this weekend, on the 20th of October, you still have a month left before it hits, and it gives you time to order stuff online that could not be Amazon like Prime level speed shipped. If you order from Cabela's and they're out of ammo and it takes them 2 or 3 weeks to get it to you, you still are going to have time at this point to get your ammunition that you need for firearm season. But I would not wait much longer than this with the ammo shortage that is out there.
That is a great thing to bring
because
up.
That would be heartbreaking to me to go to a sporting goods store with you and your kid who are going to be going out for the first time or the second time.
And there's no slugs.
And there's no slugs left. And now all of a sudden just one little rinky-dink $20, $30 item holds you back from going out there and having that experience with them. So be proactive and do it.
Yes, we saw this last year. Tons and tons of Facebook messages and forums like,
where's guns?
Does anybody have any 3-inch da-da-da they'd be willing to share? Or anybody have any? And so that's a great thing to bring up right now. Again, hey, if you're a bow hunter and a gun hunter or both, like maybe you'll be lucky. You won't even need to break out the gun this year.
Yep.
But, get ahead of it, man.
Yep.
So I think what we should do is, like, let's say, hypothetically, Grant, this week, we got a deer that we want to kill.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What are we doing? First thing first, I'll start off with, we've already got camera data of the deer, right? Not inventory.
We know who they are.
We know who they are, but I'm talking like we have a deer that we want to kill and we know the area farm that he's in. Now this week is the week that we're going to shift cameras. We're going to take some cameras from other areas of the farm that we might put back in a month, but we're going to go and both sides of the camera on this scrape line, right? Mm-hmm. Or every field entrance on this field where we think this is buck's coming in is where we're going to do it. Mm-hmm. This is the week that you move those cameras, specifically if they're cell cameras, so that you can be ready for that cold snap coming. What's something else that we're doing for that deer?
Yeah, I would say that in addition to moving those cameras around, you're really fine-tuning and specifically trying to pinpoint the scenario that you believe is going to happen. So if your deer is coming in every single day facing the same way on camera, I would make sure that you take another camera and you stretch it up the trail he's coming down. Use the stretch method. Use a method where you're identifying before he hits the camera on presumably a scrape that he's hitting that you've identified him on. Try to narrow it down so that you can cut him off even further before daylight, several hundred yards down the way. Try to do things like that. Another thing that you could probably try to do this week is data crunch. So I do it every year. I start off October 1st and I make a diagram of what way the wind is blowing every single day. And I try to use that and line that up because our farms aren't super duper far apart from one another. Usually the same wind direction is occurring on the two or three places we hunt. So this is the week where I'm really looking at observing that and trying to pinpoint and nail down what wind I think is the most preferable for him to be using. And then using that data and data from cameras like you mentioned, you can try to anticipate where you're going to hang your stand to kill this buck in late October. And we do things like that religiously. Again, like what you said, if you have a blind that you want to position out in the field a month before gun season to acclimate the deer to, this is the week to do it. This is the time in which if you have a semi-permanent blind on a sled or a cart or something like that you're going to pop up and leave, this would be the week to do it. So you've got a good month for the deer to acclimate to it before gun season starts. And it's not just voila, there on opening day of firearm.
Surprise.
Yeah. So that would be another thing that you could do. Additionally, this week is the week to be really, really sneaky about refreshing mock scrape scents. I think this is the week to be not using your time after work to go in there and try to hunt if a deer is not in there during daylight yet. But this is the week to 2 times, 3 times to go in there to different various scrape lines and just sprinkle a little bit of scent and get out of there and see what happens and see if you're upsetting him, because eventually he will daylight. His cold front will come. His time will come where you have an opportunity to kill him in the daylight hours. And if you can do those little things and slink around your property really quietly without a ton of disturbance, like on a windy day or a day where it's real hot and you're nice and sneaky, you can go in there and start really making a buck upset, because like you said, his senses are only going to be heightened. In terms of like your shooting practice, this could be a week where you dial it up a notch and you're really practicing like shooting out of a deer stand. I see a lot of people doing that and making sure that all of your gear, because presumably if there's no cold front that has happened yet, you may have gone out 1 or 2 times, filled a doe tag, and got out of the field. So you're preparing for the first opportunity.
I think that's one thing that we haven't said is like this week is really important to not hunt if you don't need to.
Yep.
These next stretch of 8 to 10 days coming up, it's hard to sit idle on the sidelines because you're like, man, it's mid-October. It's getting into late October. But if it's not right, my advice is do not push it. Take that opportunity to do these secondary and tertiary things that we're talking about instead of hunting. It is very possible. I'm a big believer that you can overhunt an area. You can do more damage. So just by not hunting, you could be doing yourself a favor because you're waiting for that time to be right. And even if we, like you said, let's say we don't, let's say it stays semi-warm through the end of October. I hope it doesn't, but it could. Again, just be conscious of like the first time you hunt a stand is the best time you're going to hunt a stand. Most of you bow hunters are family men and women. Take an opportunity if you've got warmer weather or a wrong wind on a weekend to put a little deposit in the family time jar, Spend time with your kids, spend time with your wife, spend time with your parents, because again, we know that it's coming. This, like we said, the Super Bowl of deer hunting is coming. November is going to be here. And if you hunt hard in those, whether you're a weekend warrior or you take a week off for the rut, but if you think about it, a majority of November is going to be consumed by deer hunting. You're darn sure going to hunt every weekend in November before gun season, and you're going to hunt during gun season, and that spills right into Thanksgiving. So think about that. If it's not right, don't push it. Stay out of those good spots and do one of these things that we had just talked about: moving blind, shooting guns, shooting bow, getting your gear ready, or most importantly and lastly, make sure that you spend time with your family, because you're going to be putting some serious tree time in here in about 20 days.
Yeah, and make sure that you're proactive about moving your stands. Like you said, most of the field edges are opened up. You can go in there and start hanging these auxiliary stands that aren't your primary keepers that you keep all year long. You can go in there and start trying to hunt and figure out where those deer are going to be and try to get a jump on them in October. But like you said, if there's one thing that we've learned in the last 15 years, it's every year it seems like we're hunting less and less and less, but our kill count is going up or maintaining. So I know it's hard just because we've been waiting for 9 months to hunt. That staying out of there for an additional week seems agonizing, and I agree with you, and I want to go out there too. But give the little fawn that's going to come out into your clover field and the spike buck a break. They're going to be just fine. They're going to be there tomorrow. Let them do their thing and kick around and play cat and mouse with each other and run around like dogs. That's fine. Let Mr. Big show you his hand. Use that time instead to sit on your laptop. Use some time to analyze that deer data in past years. You and I do this every year. We're looking through trail camera folders in years past, trying to see if we can pinpoint plus or minus a day on when that particular buck we're going to have that we want to kill this year as a 4 or 5 year old ish is going to show his hand. And if you're patient, it's going to pay off, I feel like, more than being impatient. Don't try to force a square peg into a round hole this time of year. Don't cut your opportunities short just because you want to be out there. And I know that's easier said than done, and you don't have to listen to me at the end of the day. If you want to go hunting, go hog wild. That's cool.
Absolutely.
That's not what we're saying. Go fill a doe tag if you want to. We're going to go hunting in October, to be clear. We're going to go try to axe a few does, but it's not going to probably be in proximity to the buck that we want to kill.
No.
We're going to try to kill a doe on a fringe, like an easy gimmick, like, oh, this family group of does is rolling into this plot at about an hour before sunset every night. Let's go try to thump the biggest one out of there, drag her gut, or get her out of there.
Yep.
So,
and I know that, some of the more seasoned hunters are going, yeah, you're not telling me anything I don't know. I know that the whole concept of this, beginning of October series was just to revisit some topics. We started off about stands and blinds, and we got into scrape hunting and decoy hunting, and now it's like, this is where we implement it all and we put it all together, and you're getting ready to do it. So, we hope that you took some value out of this. We're going to probably keep doing this, I think, throughout maybe November. We're going to start getting back into the controversies here now, and I really hope that we've got several kill episodes to record here. But this week, as Grant said when we introed this podcast, it's just an important week to prepare yourself for what's to come. And hopefully some of these little things that maybe you think are redundant or not important can really add up to make a big difference come the moment of truth, or more importantly, put you in place to have that opportunity. So, just hunt smart. That sounds crazy. You need to hunt hard, but with whitetail hunting, it's about strategy. And boy, I don't know. I wish I had a whole pot of knowledge to share with you this week. It's just, it's covering your bases. It's being smart. It's maximizing your time, not in a tree, but maximizing your time that you have right now, because it's coming. Your opportunity's coming.
And as you're slinking in and out of checking your trail cameras and freshening scrapes, start to take notice of the changes around you. If you see a little bush that got beat up last night or a little sapling that looks like it got raked, that's a good indicator that things are heating up in that specific area of your farm. Using perennial data, like things you observe every year that are happening on your piece of ground that you're hunting, whether it's public or private, more than likely that terrain feature is something that a buck enjoys, that security cover is something that a buck enjoys, or a group of does that you want to kill enjoy, and you can use that knowledge to your benefit this week. This is the week to hunt, like you said, smarter, not harder. So good luck if you're out in the woods. And on to the would you rather question. So this is one that you and I go back and forth on, and I still don't know what side I'm on. Well, I do know what side I'm on, but I'm not a gear junkie, so I know what option I'm going to take. But would you rather have a perfectly tuned fixed broadhead to shoot, or a 2-inch plus cut mechanical broadhead that you shoot this year?
Oh, I would rather take the perfectly tuned bow and fixed blade.
Perfectly tuned fixed blade?
Yeah, well, I mean,
outside of the mechanical?
Mechanicals can be forgiving in some scenarios, especially on the marginal shots towards the back end of the deer. But I think when you have a bow that's tuned right, you have energy transfer into the arrow, your bow's quieter, and then you're going to just have better performance, both, close range, but more importantly, down range as well. So accuracy kills. I don't plan on taking marginal shots. They happen every year, all the time. I've had them happen, but I would rather take that hyper-tuned bow with a fixed blade broadhead over a big a semi-tuned bow with mechanical.
Sure. Okay. Getting into the next podcast, that'll be coming out on October 24th. That'll be arguably our favorite little 6-day stretch of hunting. It seems like every single year we've had an opportunity within the 24th to 31st, that Halloween time frame, and this year is probably going to be no different. So hopefully you guys are keying in on whatever your target buck is and trying to put him on the ground before things get crazy in November. So good luck if you're hunting out there. Hopefully you've identified what you want to do and how you're going to do it. Now make the plan, use the data, hunt smarter, not harder, and capitalize. So let us know if you have any success. Do you have anything for the good of the cause till next week?
No, just if you kill something, tag us in it, man. Bucks, like I said, are already starting to drop now, but if you guys are lucky enough to get one down, tag Last Brett, tag me or you in it, and I want to see him, dude. Share that harvest. I'm pumped for everybody. So that being said, appreciate all of you. We'll catch you on the next one. Don't waste it.